back. And as we said before our last break, we would be having joining us the Minister of Infrastructure Development and Housing, Minister Julius Espat. Minister, good morning. I think it's been a while since you've been on set.
Maybe a year.
Maybe a year, right?
Yeah.
Let's just talk a bit about how it's been for you at the Ministry of Infrastructure Development and Housing over the last year.
Exciting. I think I'm enjoying it. I have good staff. We have been given a mandate by the government to do serious work, and it's within the field that I am used to, so it is a continuation of what I normally do, but in the public service, which makes it a different way of approaching how you get work done. But it's been exciting meeting new people, you learn every day, and that's the most important thing.
Going to perhaps one of the more recent happenings in the ministry, we saw during that Christmas week where the ministry, in collaboration with the larger government and the Prime Minister, issued houses to single mothers, some 20 houses across the Cayo district and I believe Stan Creek. Would you speak to that initiative and how that came about?
I'll start from when we handed it up. Very emotional.
Okay.
I never realized the impact it would have in changing people's lives. We knew that as a government we had to do things that are tangible to people, that people can feel. And we were of the opinion that government wastes a lot of money, in general terms, on white elephant projects, and the people don't feel the benefits from it. And so that before the election we convinced our party that it was important that we went back to this housing idea. We were ambitious, no doubt, that we wanted to achieve a certain amount. And then we got into the reality when we hit and we formed government. The economy was in shambles. We had an emergency running through at the same time, the flooding and COVID. But despite that, Cabinet approved a budget for us to start a pilot project. And so this last year was basically putting together the team, putting the professionals in place, identifying contractors, looking at how the system works. And we got the first 20 delivered this December. But the reaction of the recipients was, I think, what softens your heart more than anything else. You're dealing with people that, in my opinion, would possibly never own a house. And now they have that in place. And shelter, in our opinion, maybe not only on our opinion, with the United Nations, shelter is a human right. And we're adding it down to other things because you are now getting water too, which is also a human right. You're getting power, which will become a human right. And in the cases where we're not on the grid, we are providing some houses with solar, which gives us a different approach to how we do things. It is, that's basically what it is low-cost housing. The houses were designed to be able to expand. So with time, when the recipient increases the income in the family, they will be able to grow the house, and the plans that are provided to them show them how that is to be done. But you should be there when people feel that pride of living under their own roof. That's an awesome feeling.
That's one of the significant part of the program here, the stories of the lives impacted. What are the testimonies that you've heard from those persons receiving?
It starts with tears. Basically, most of them were so emotional that they couldn't hold back. We had a lady that in Belmopan, for example, that her husband was killed. He was a police officer. I think her son, she was shot in the face. Some tragic story. We had another lady where her house was burnt. We have more than one that houses were burnt down. We have others that have never had an opportunity, really. And so that's why I think is more important than the numbers. It's the importance of how you're changing lives one by one. So we handed up 20 houses in December. We have completed 30 more that are about to be handed up.
Wow.
They're done, finished. We have 35 that have been approved, but we have some little issues with making sure that their documentation is in place. And Friday, there are 50 more that will be going in front of the selection committee. So we're doing fairly well.
So let's talk about that, because we do know, and I know you have spoken out publicly about it a lot of times, that there is severe poverty in this country, and in some cases people live in conditions that are completely deplorable. So the need is great. How do you select who is eligible, and how do you remove the politics from it? Because that's where people will first speculate.
You can try to remove the politics. That's a reality in life in Belize. So let's be clear with that. I mean, you try the best you can. And how you do that? By you do a selection committee and you base it on certain criteria. Everybody is eligible to participate. Everybody is eligible to apply. And we have informed the area reps throughout the country, red and blue, so that they are the ones that are elected by the people, so they have a better idea of the reality in their constituency. So that's the political aspect of it. So once the application comes in, the criteria is a simple one: no income or low income. It was originally single mothers, and we changed it to single parent.
Okay.
And we added on elderly, and we added on disabled. And so that's basically your and that you have to own a piece of land or a lease, or at least have a permission. In the rural communities, you have large tracts of land where families live in. And so we would need permission from the family to be able to allow a construction to happen. Those are the criteria. Then they are vetted with the ministry. Somebody goes out and does an interview to make sure that the application fills the reality. And so an interview is done. They go and see where you live and your reality, where you come from, and they ask many questions. That information is compiled, and then it goes to the selection committee. The selection committee is made up of CEOs from various ministries. It is made up of private sector participation, activists in the private sector. And it's made up of, I think we have participation of the planners of Belize. So it's spread out. Okay. And then that application process, once they fulfill, they vote on it, they agree that it's been approved, then it comes back to the ministry. When it comes back to the ministry, it goes to what we call the housing execution unit. And they do another type of evaluation. They go to the site to make sure that originally we were just approving and say, you're going to land, it looks good and everything. And then when we started, we realized, well, we have to evaluate it because it's swamp, or maybe it's on a hill with a serious pitch that it makes it impossible. The foundation has to be determined where you are. So all of that analysis is done. And then the housing execution unit presents that to the CEO, who gives the final approval base that everything is followed. And then we go out. Contractors are chosen from within the different areas that we are working, because...
Is there a tendering process?
You do mostly selective tendering for this, because we are trying to reach out to as much contractors as possible. The profits in this type of project is very limited, and we are trying to give work to people that have not been working for a long time or would not get an opportunity because of large projects. And so what the housing execution unit does, that they go out and they evaluate the contractors. You have to register with the ministry, and by registering, they dig up all your necessary information, the reputation that you have, your banking information, the experience that you have, and all of that. And we're not talking at high level, so we understand the reality.
So you're talking like small contractors with smaller
small
operations.
Contractor, very small. Then that's last year. The most difficult, I wouldn't say problem, but the most difficult stumbling block was land.
Yeah.
People that are impoverished don't own land.
Well, I was thinking of that. The poorest of the poor will have the land to be able to access the housing.
We have asked the government, we have asked the Ministry of Natural Resources to help us with that, and they have. Yeah. But now that we are more involved with it, we have realized that we have to do it more like housing projects to be able to move on further. We have in communication with a contractor out of Boom that is prefabricating these buildings for us now. So I think we'll be signing that contract hopefully this month, where they can produce between 20 to 50 on a prefabricated basis, meaning the same design, but concrete walls.
Right.
And they build in the factory, and they bring with cranes, and they install, and
And
it
you
makes
put it
it
together.
much faster.
On the point, well, two things. One, what's the total invested so far? You said it's about 50 homes, 20 already handed over, 30 going out.
The budget
this week.
was $5 million.
So you built 50 homes with $5 million?
No. That's the budget for the year, for the fiscal year. We have finished the 50, and we plan to finish maybe about 135, 140 before the fiscal concludes, which is in March. So we are on target with the budget. That budget was to be able to set up the unit, to hire professionals, to be able to get the necessary vehicles, whatever is necessary to have the unit run, and then establish the cost per the homes, and then move on. The cost is a factor.
What's the average cost per home?
Between $35,000 to $40,000, depending on where it is. That changes. It started at about 30 something, but since we started in last February, prices have increased in material approximately 10%. So even though you had a bill of quantities, you had your estimates, by the time you reach by the end of the year, you have to be readjusting. But the cost per square foot is really low compared. We compared it to the prefabricated houses that the Mennonites do, and we are below that. And the house comes with everything. It's small, but it comes with everything. It is inclusive of your septic tank. It is inclusive of your soakaway.
Utilities are installed.
Everything is ready. Now, we don't connect electricity or water. We ask the client to be able to assist in that, but we facilitate, meaning we speak to the utility companies to be able to assist them. Sometimes the area representatives that are involved, they use their influence within the area to be able to facilitate water and electricity.
So what do you do if a minister comes to you and say, I want my constituent to receive one of these homes?
He can apply, and then goes through the process. That's why I say you can't take away the political part. And I made sure, and the Prime Minister made sure, that we have contacted all area reps, including opposition members. They are on the list. And once the application process is vetted, and their people are accepted, then they will get a house built.
And can you say definitively that persons who've been recommended by opposition ministers have been approved for homes as yet?
Yes. We started in the Kaya district. And the Stank Creek. We are now building in Corozal. We are building in Orange Walk. This application process that's coming up on Friday will include Belize City, which is where the majority of the opposition members come from.
Let me just track back to something you mentioned before. You said the exploration of the possibility of housing sites.
Yes.
What's the thought process here? Because we've yet to see a successful housing site established in this country.
I wouldn't say, in general terms, 100%. We have some that have failed. And basically, housing sites failed. I'm speaking as a designer now. When you don't consider all the factors. To be able to have a successful housing site, it either has to be very close to an established community already, or if you're doing it separate, it has to come with other things. You have to have
reliable
education
transport.
facility, you have to have reliable transportation, and you have to have some kind of economic movement for it to be successful. So yes, we are far away from them to be 100% successful, but it is the only way.
Which one would you say is
the one everybody knows? Mahogany Heights has been the one that we complain about the most. And so that's a reality that we can't run away from. That one, the infrastructure went in, houses were built, but it's too far from a main town. And you don't have any industries in the area that was established. And you don't have any schools in the area that was easily to access. And if somebody is really, well, everybody is hurting right now. The added transportation factor going to either Belmopan or Belize City is something of concern. But I don't think it is a failure. It is in the process that it can become a very vibrant community. We are presently looking at that.
How do you use the lessons of Mahogany Heights in planning for a new housing site?
We're trying like right now we're trying to, in Armenia, we're trying to acquire a property that's very close to our village, which would be like a sort of a village expansion. And we are asking the Ministry of Natural Resources to identify plots that are close to existing communities. The argument with Mahogany Heights at the time was that it would have been better maybe if you expanded Belmopan and used that same resource. It goes back and forth. But we have to learn from previous experiences and find a way to move on. the reality is we can't do it at the pace that we would like to be able to serve the amount of people that we would want if we continue with this 1-1 approach, because it's expensive. I have a house building in Arenal presently. I have another one in Shunush. You understand me? So, and they're in remote areas, so it's logistics becomes a problem. Finance becomes a problem. So if you can build 50 houses, for example, or even 20 in a specific area, it makes it more efficient. And you can even connect the utilities a little bit more efficient. And so that's the mindset that we have presently.
That's what you're working towards, not
Yes,
established
yes.
as yet.
Well, we have acquired one in the Kaya district up to now. I think in the Orange Walk district there's
In
one
your
set aside.
constituency?
In my constituency, there's one in Orange Walk East, I believe. There's one in Belize Rural North presently that we're working on by Boom. And that is the one that will start pretty shortly. And then we are asking and we are going and seeing in every constituency we want to establish a group. But we are not stopping the individual ones. We're just trying to find other alternatives. And we are looking at recyclable materials for other options. There are some new products coming out that use recycled wood, combining it with plastic. They create siding. I mean, you have all options that we are exploring. Once our engineers vet it, that it is a design that can withhold certain type of wind, then I believe we are fine. Once the foundation is set, depending on the ground.
I wanted to go back to one point earlier just to ask, how many houses do you expect to complete by the end of the fiscal year?
About 135, more or less.
Okay, so at 135, that almost already runs you at the 5 million.
Yeah, that's
without
the budget.
Without including establishing the unit
Yes.
and hiring professionals.
Yes.
Correct. So are you running over budget?
No, the budget was $5 million that was approved for the housing and $500,000 for the administrative work. So we are working within we can't go above the budget. There's a line item that determines how much you can spend and what you give for it. And what we will do is at the end of the year, a complete report will be given to Cabinet saying this is the budget that was given to us, this is what was accomplished, this is the cost these are the similar what we did with the emergency fund spending. We at the ministry, we are trying our best to be as accountable as we possibly can. And it's a learning experience, but I think it's important. If somebody is giving you the opportunity of giving you a budget, then I think it is our responsibility. Well, it's not what we want. If you look at the regulations, you should give a report back, which is what we are following.
Do you expect that budget to increase in the next fiscal year? And I ask because when you do the math, even over the next 10 years at $5 million a year, you still won't reach that 10,000 house
Well, the 10,000, there's a misconception of the 10. The 10 is what we as a party before government promised that would be built. We will engage in building 10,000 houses. The Ministry of Infrastructure is one entity that will be responsible to build houses. But you have the program is broken up into 3 phases. One is the low income approach, which is what we're doing right now. Second is the middle income approach. That's designed for people that are working like yourself, public officers. And so what we would do is facilitate them then. They won't want a low income house. They would want maybe a 2 or 3 bedroom house. So what we could do then is give you a set of plans that is free of cost. The application or processing fees to get those plans approved would also come free of cost. We would then facilitate by having you go to the lending institution, which is the DFC, which we have an agreement right now with them, or the National Bank. Once you take your information, your financial information, and they approve you, then we can build the house on your behalf with the financing coming from those lending institutions. And we can also add in that we could probably reduce your costs because we could maybe get a duty-free on your behalf. That's the second phase.
Yeah. But
And then
DFC has an ongoing program right now for...
Yeah, they have a normal program
for
like that,
public
but we are linking up with that so that you have a structured system. So in reality, the MIDH basically is the executor of the program.
Yeah.
We don't get involved in the financing or who decides if you can get it or not. That's not our role. We facilitate, and if DFC or National Bank says you're approved, this is the money, MIDH can build it for you, or you can find somebody else to build it for you.
But very clearly. There's no way in one term you'll be able to build
I
10,000.
don't think we'll reach the 10,000, no matter what. But
So
it's
what's
a
the
good
more
goal.
realistic? I mean, goals are ambitious. That's what they're supposed to be.
Well,
What's the realistic?
This year, I'm
estimation
hoping
now?
that they give me a budget for 500 houses. That's a wish list. But I'll put it in the line item where I put it in. And if the Ministry of Finance, in their wisdom, decides that we will be given that opportunity to build 500 houses, that's where we're going. If they decide that they will cut it in half, that's what we will do. All I can say is, and I'm proud of this, is that we have a good reputation, that we've followed with what they have asked us to do. And we have done it as efficiently as we possibly can. And so it's up to the Prime Minister and the Cabinet and Ministry of Finance to decide how that budget will be balanced. It's a difficult task.
Of course.
And
Everybody's putting together the wish list by now, right?
and the wish list sometimes really high.
But let's come back to it though, because the housing portfolio is only a part of it.
Yes.
And one of the things, I can hear very clearly from what you're saying that you're proud of, and having that personal experience of handing over and meeting families reconnects you back with
Yes.
the community. But infrastructure work is equally important.
Yeah.
And it also has a lot to do with keeping quality of life standards, businesses going, and it's a heavy investment. Let's talk about some of the projects that are ongoing and also how you remedy some of the problems that exist. I know there was a quick fix the other day on the Philip Golson Highway near the river. There's quite a number of projects that need to be fixed as well.
Just to give you an idea, the budget for housing is 5 million. The entire budget for the ministry is like 142. You see the difference? But why is it so high? There's a lot of projects that we inherited that are financed by foreign institutions.
Yeah.
The Caracol Road is one that we are working on, that we are continuing. That's going really well.
At one point, there was an attempt to negotiate with the financiers too.
We did.
Yeah.
The Caracol, you can't negotiate, that has started already.
Yes.
But you can negotiate the continuation. And we negotiated the continuation, and we saved about $25 million in the Caracol Road. We just changed the scope of works, the size, the width, and certain specifications. And we also negotiated with the lending institution. They have some supervisors in place. So everybody cooperated. And so we managed to save 25 million. That's ongoing. Then we have the coastal.
Coastal is ongoing.
That's a major one. That could not be negotiated because that was an entire contract. That's about halfway through. That's another one that's ongoing. Then you have the one between Corozal to Sarteneja, financed by the Taiwanese government and built by a Taiwanese company. That one is ongoing also. The ones that we recently did was the one to Orange Walk, from Biscayne to Orange Walk, which we call it the Remate project. That has recently been signed, and that has started already. About 3 contractors are working on that. We recently did the Halova Bridge. That's another one that we saved about $30 million based on the scope of work again, the type of
Well, the work
bridge.
is just starting with that. You put out the release
But
yesterday.
a lot of work, that one you won't see work on the ground all the time because that's prefabrication. What we released yesterday is that the contractor built some barges, and those barges will be placed in the center of the river so that the cranes and equipment can go to be able to start driving the piles. So you'll see some activity there. The one that you spoke of is an emergency.
Yeah.
Where the road, the shore guards failed, and that was from 2009. When they did that part of the highway, that portion was not done because it supposedly was fine at the time, but it failed. The amount of boats that are going up and down the river undermine it. That one, that has to go to tender. It probably will be selective tender because of the time frame that we need to work with. We are preparing bids for it right now. That will go to the Ministry of Finance for them to look at. It has to go to Cabinet and the House because it will have to be a supplementary. It's not in the budget. And the Contractor General will have to review it to see. But normally those emergency projects, the Contractor General looks at it before he looks at others because of the emergency aspect of it.
Yeah. When you say selective tendering, let's talk about that. We just discussed the Commission of Inquiry findings, tendering processes being dismissed or not followed through on. And you know this always comes back as a major issue as to who is selected to be able to implement these projects.
If I can go into it a little.
Yes.
There are three types of tendering processes that we utilize. One is called limited tender, which you pick one contractor. The other is called selective tender, where you pick three competent contractors. And the last one is called open bid tender, where you just open it up to everybody. It is designed for different purposes. In an emergency, the Constitution and the Finance and Audit Reform Act allows you to use limited tender because you don't have time. For example, that road, if we would have not done anything and waited for an open bid, you wouldn't have any work happening there for the next 6 months because the process takes long.
Yeah.
And so the Finance and Audit Reform Act gives you the authority to be able to use limited tender. Once you follow the procedures that the limited tender requests, the Finance Ministry has to approve, the engineers from the ministry have to approve, the contractor has to be a reputable contractor that has shown that he has done this kind of work and that his prices are within the norms. Remember, our ministry has engineers that every day are calculating bill of quantities to determine what is the cost of things. So once the contractor fulfills all those requirements, then it goes out to him, and then we have to take it back to finance, and then the contractor general has to vet it. But it's a fast process. The selective tender is the second phase. It's not really an emergency, but it's something that you really want to get done faster than normal. That has its own series of regulations. The three contractors have to be vetted. They have to be reputable contractors. They have to be efficient in what they're doing. They have to go through the entire process. And then you give them the opportunity to bid, and it's either the lowest or whatever you put in the contract. Remember, the designers or the supervisors or the engineers.
So you don't always pick the lowest bid.
You put it, when you do a bid document, it is embedded in that. So if you want it to be the lowest bid, you put that. If you want it to be a competitive bid, then you put that. If you want it, it can be determined once there's a scope that is acceptable.
Yes.
Not always is the cheapest the best. And that's what the engineers evaluate. And then you have the open tender, which is the one that is the preferred and recommended option for all government procurement, which is what you put it out for bid.
It's seen as the most fair process.
But that takes its time. And that has everybody involved. So that you have to put it in the newspapers, you have to, I think it's 3 times in the newspaper, it has to be gazetted, there's a process in how you open the envelopes, it's a lot. So all of them are valid. But give you an example, ministry does tendering for small things every day. The CEO has to be issuing contracts every single day for small things, chopping of the grass, mowing of the lawn, cleaning of the side of the highway, renting a crane, buying materials with trucks, a backhoe in a certain area. If we don't have enough equipment, renting a grader. You can't go for open tendering for that. So what you do with that is use selective tendering, because it's a level playing field. You know who the people are, you know what their rates are, and then the engineers choose depending on the best available. What we try to do is to minimize the cost by having it efficient, in that you try to hire the people that are in the zones. So I wouldn't hire somebody from Corozal, for example, to build something or rent me something in Toledo. And also we are looking at the people that are not the large contractors, so that we can distribute the wealth as best as we can, and which is important, I believe.
Well, running out of time, I mean, I'll go deeper with this one, but I do want to press on another issue, because when we talk about the infrastructure upgrades that are necessary, I know you've spoken extensively about working on sugar roads. You know, there are always communities that get left behind. You have sometimes places in Toledo that need access. Not everyone may get a hot mix road. But let's talk about how you prioritize where you implement your upgrade projects.
Ooh. Everybody has a request.
And everybody's work is priority.
And
if it's
everybody's
my street,
priority.
it's a priority.
Last year, we concentrated on the rural communities, because the rural communities don't have an established, organized governing system. You understand me? The municipalities and the cities, they collect income, they have resources. So our mandate is not municipalities or cities. The Ministry of Infrastructure Development has no responsibility for cities or municipalities.
Yeah.
So we concentrated on the rural communities. We got into a time when the emergency was on. So
Yes.
the sugar roads was a major problem because we in our mandate as Plan Belize, it was to be able to back up the productive sector was one of them. So we made a conscientious effort to help the sugar roads as best as we could, and the farmers in the rural communities, access to their farms. And then the village, I mean, the gentleman can tell you the villages are the ones that receive the least portion of the budget. And so we made a conscientious effort. But 3/4 along last year, the municipalities started to shout loud and say, listen to me, we need help. And so I sat with the Prime Minister and Cabinet and I said, well, we have to share. It's not our responsibility, but we are Belizeans at the end of the day. And if we can help, so what we started to do was partner with the municipalities. We tell them, listen to me, we could help you all with some materials, we could help you all with some equipment, you all put the labor, you all do other things. So we are now partnering with municipalities. We've just helped them in Corozal to pave a road. We paved some roads in Dangriga. Belize City has gotten some help from us too. And now this year coming, we're putting in a budget to see if we can help the municipalities some more. But where do the requests come from? Well, we have zone engineers. The country is divided by zone engineers, and the CEO meets with them every week, and they bring in the list of requests. You have requests coming in from area reps, which is always. You have requests coming in from chairmen of different villages. You have Belizeans calling on your television station, on radio stations, and we are monitoring.
Yeah.
I have about 3 or 4 people just monitoring the media to be able to pick up where the people have needs. Like, for example, I am doing some work in Vista Del Mar right now, and a lady called and said, yeah, the greater media, but you never come to my street, and my street they're 2 blocks away. Things like that. It helps us, and so I don't mind people criticizing or giving their input, because it's how you learn.
It shows you
as to where the needs are, and there's incredible amount of needs in this country when it pertains to infrastructure.
Of course, of course. No, I just wanted to, if you want to follow up on that.
Not necessarily.
Okay, because I want to close off with something else. I know we are completely out of time. It went by so fast. But let's talk about what's happening with government at the moment. Yet we've seen the first major cabinet reshuffle. And clearly there is a lot of speculation about what's happening internally. Let me hear your thoughts.
I have been a manager for 30 years. Shuffling is a norm. A leader of a country or of a company has to be able to shuffle once in a while to be able to put the correct people in the correct position. That's what managers do. And so I don't have a problem with shuffling. The Prime Minister believed that he could better services by doing so. The people were giving their opinion, and I think that's a responsible government.
I mean, since you've been monitoring, I'm sure you've heard the concerns about the handling of the pandemic that have been very public.
That's a difficult situation for anybody to handle on their own. And I think no country in the world has handled it perfectly. So we are just one of many countries, and you have managerial styles. We are trying a new style to see if we can better it, a new personality, and
what's
that's
the hope that will be different? I know this was a conversation that...
Kevin is a young, energetic, and intelligent person, but he also has experience, how a lot of people don't understand. Kevin has more managerial public service experience than most of us. He was a mayor of a town for home, I think 2 or 3 terms, and so I think it's an adequate choice within the options that we have. I think he will do a very good job. I can only give you my point of view and my experience. I think we have to be humble as leaders. I think we have to be willing to listen to people. I think you have to surround yourself by credible people and surround yourself by different types of thinking. That's, I believe, the secret. Because if you only listen to one sector, then you're not looking at the whole picture. And that's what we are learning. You have to understand that when a new government comes in, it is a learning experience. And humbleness is what I believe is the most important. I don't have a problem with criticism. I look at criticism, and nobody likes for people to tell you you're not doing something right. But if you really analyze it, you can better yourself. And so even though it hurts your heart when somebody tells, oh, this and that, but you go home, you look, analyze it, and you say, well, you know something, I think they have a point. And that's why you have to surround yourself. That's the Prime Minister, and any Prime Minister surrounds himself with a cabinet. He doesn't want that cabinet to be far-right thinking only, or far-left thinking only, or grassroots only, or business people only. He has to have a combination of all. And it is his decision at the end of the day to make that final decision based on the information provided. I believe communication with the public service and the professionals within the health system is the key. But it is not the only factor. There's also an economic factor that has to be taken into consideration, which involves all of us. Mm-hmm. That balance is important. If we go strictly health, then we lock down this place forever. Mm-hmm. But then how will we eat? How will we survive? How will we take our children to school? How will we educate them? How will we do business? How will we continue as a nation? So all those factors have to be taken into account before a decision is made. A very difficult decision for anybody to make.
Are these the reasons, going back to the humility comments you made initially on this topic, are these the reasons you believe as to why Minister Espat was removed?
I wouldn't want to say that. The humility is something that we all have to strive for. We are all human beings. And you have to understand sometimes when we become ministers, you can easily be led astray by believing that you're above people. And that is wrong. George Price taught us it should be the opposite. You should stick in your head every day that you are servants of the people. But people put things in front of you or treat you in a different way and expect that you act in a different way. And that's why I'm telling you humility. I pray every night for humility. I do, because that's the key, in my opinion, to be able to be grounded, to make decisions. It's not our money. We are basically here temporarily to manage your money as efficiently as we possibly can. That's how I see it. And so if people are clamoring, I need this, I want this, yes, but it's their right. How to distribute it as efficiently as possible and equitably as possible is, in my opinion, the road to success.
The type of behavior he was criticized for displaying in office, in the Ministry of Health office, was it unbecoming of the person you knew him to be personally?
I wouldn't want to get into that, to be honest. He is a colleague of mine.
Let me come back to yesterday's press conference from the opposition. You've sat in the opposition seat. You talked about criticism, yeah. And clearly, when you are in opposition, that's part of what you do. But you say that you take every criticism that comes at you and you analyze it for truth. From what the opposition presented yesterday, what's a nugget of learning, lesson, or truth that comes from that?
Well, you listen to credible people. That's the first thing you have to analyze. And if you have been in power for 13 years and you have failed miserably, you have lost a certain level of credibility. Mm-hmm. And so I understand what they're doing. I respect what they're doing. Democracy is important to have the opposing. I was a very vocal opposition member. But it has to come with credibility. They were in charge of the Ministry of Health for so long. And if in 13 years you can see the record, I won't tell you what that record is. The Belizean people know that. That they believe that none of us is capable of running the Ministry of Health because it seems that anybody the Prime Minister put they won't be happy with. That's their prerogative, no problem. Kevin, who is to me an honorable man, will prove them wrong. That's what is there. That they have opposing views to ours, I respect that. I welcome that. Mm-hmm. It's the people to decide, and in a democracy and our meeting, it's what you guys think when you go to the polls. So that's what the role they are playing. And I believe we have to have a vibrant opposition. That is important. Yeah. And that's how I see it. I've always run my politics in Cayo South based on that premise. Mm-hmm. And the Prime Minister and Cabinet has allowed us to be vocal, and so that's the premise I work on. And
so no nugget of truth come out from yesterday from the opposition press conference.
What did they say, that Kevin can't handle it? That
well, they were
asking that Mr. Espat be removed. I don't know what else I didn't follow it that much.
One of the criticism that did come out, and maybe we could get a quick comment from you, is reports that there's contracts being given to a company up north that that's related to one of your cabinet ministers. And have you been able to look into that?
I've heard that. We have checked. Our responsibility is not to find out if your friend or anybody has a company and he's close to you. Our responsibility is to check if that person is credible, if that person can do the work, if that person is efficient, if that person has the necessary equipment. That company specifically fulfill all those requirements. I can't go in and find out if they're a granny friend or if you may know her from high school. You understand me? So, but that's criticism coming from the political mindset, and that's fine. It allows you to think twice or thrice and say, listen to me, this is a concern, let's look at it, let's go into detail, let's find out what the situation, and let's minimize it as best as possible. There's nothing wrong with that coming out. But that, you know how that information came out? Because we provided it. We provided a report of the expenditure for the emergency fund of $12.5 million. We gave the information, we gave the contractor, we gave the value, we gave where it is there, public, all of you all got it. And so we are not hiding from it, we are there waiting for you all to give us more feedback so that we can better, when we give another one, then hopefully that is minimized.
So the criticism is that one of your ministers may have shares in this company.
We have, as far as we have found out, there is no shares, there is nothing that, and if that's the case, then we would address it.
Well, I think you opened yourself up for the public to be able to say, since they know that you're listening. But we appreciate you coming in. I think the fundamental point was definitely talking about the application process that starts once again with the single parent or low income housing. And we hope that people take advantage.
I would like to invite, and I know you all have participated, but I'd like to invite you as we go along, maybe visit the ministry one of these days to see how we operate. Visit some of the other sites that we are working on. We are open. We are willing to help, and we are willing to serve. That is what we are here mostly for, to be able to give service to the people.
All right. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
All right. With that, we're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we're going to be talking of the launch of Majestic Daughters. Please stay tuned.